Hello, fellas. Okay. Very thankful and grateful for giving me this opportunity to present on white matter diseases. We're all a part of this great institute, Sri Lakshmi Narayana Institute of Medical Science, uh, building great doctors. So, what is the outline? So, we have MRI, multiple sclerosis, conventional MRI, MRI diagnosis criteria, what's it in Asia, variations of MS, non-conventional MRI. MRI is biomarker in MS, in NMO and ADM. So we mainly concentrate on multiple sclerosis as it is seen more often, more common in India, usually the South Asian countries. NMO, not seen that often, but a very serious condition involving these aquaporin receptors. And we have ADM, again, long segment involvement. Then MRI and multiple sclerosis. MRI lacks specificity but has high sensitivity, established as a most important paraclinical test, important in the new diagnostic criteria. Many new MR technologies have been first applied for multiple sclerosis. For example, FLAIR, MTR, double IR, etc. Even we have developed a lot of biomarkers as well for the same thing. Then conventional MRI MS. T2-weighted and FLAIR images. What do we see? We have hyperintense edema, inflammation, demyelination, axonal loss, can be hyperintense, lacks specificity. Slightly hyperintense, dirty appearing white matter can also be visualized. Isointense, normal appearing white matter. Microscopical demyelination or axonal loss. Hypointense, again, iron deposition, which can be seen in the putamen or thalamus. Hyperintense on T1, periphery of active lesions, dentate nucleus, 20% of MS patients. After brain irradiation, isointense in 80 to 90% of T2 lesions. Hypointense can also be T1 black holes, axonal loss, severe demyelination. Gadolinium enhanced when there is BBB breakdown, there is blood brain barrier breakdown in active lesions, and 5 to 10 times seen in relapse. In diagnostic criteria, McDonald criteria should always be remembered. Symptoms suggestive of multiple sclerosis, dissemination in space, dissemination in time. These are two most important things. Then we have 2005 revised edition, in which we have MRI criteria for brain abnormality. Space, one gadolinium enhancing lesion or 9 T2 hyperintense lesions if there is no gadolinium enhancing lesion. List one infratemporal lesion, juxtacortical lesion, and 3 periventricular lesions. Spinal cord lesion can be considered equivalent to a brain infratemporal lesion and enhancing cord lesion to an enhancing brain lesion. MRI criteria for dissemination of lesions and time. Detection of an enhancing lesion at least 3 months after onset of initial event, not at the site corresponding to the initial event. Detection of a new T2 lesion if it appears at any time compared with a reference scan done at least 30 days after onset of clinical event. So it is very important that we see all this. Okay, then we have something called the Swanton criteria 2006, intended to increase the sensitivity to clinical isolated syndrome. Dissemination in space, more than 2 of the following: subcortical white matter, periventricular white matter, posterior fossa, and spinal cord. New dissemination in time, new T2 lesion and follow-up MRI, higher sensitivity, almost equal specificity. Hesitation among most clinicians to allow MRI in Asia. One third of the patients have optical or spinal or Devick's disease. Most of these patients are probably neuromyelitis optica patients. Fewer brain lesions than Caucasians, much fewer cerebellar lesions. This was a study done by Nakashima in 1999, so it was a breakthrough. But fewer chronic progressive sclerosis patients, more lesions with atypical MR findings, lower rate of positive CSF oligoclonal bands. MS diagnostic criteria in Japan, clinical symptoms more important than MRI for RRMS. Same with McDonald criteria for PPMS, additional definitions for CPMS, Devick's disease, optical spinal MS, and Ballo's concentric sclerosis. So proposed modifications to the McDonald criteria for use in Asia. So, what new do we have for Asia? No restriction to length of spinal cord lesion, no restriction to spinal cord lesion with swelling, no restriction to spinal cord lesion involving complete cross section. Okay. Brain MRA. 4 or more brain MRA T2 hyperintense lesions in patients less than 60 years of age or one gadolinium enhancing lesion, unlike what is seen for other countries. More than one lesion in 2 or more typical sites. What are the typical sites is the most important part. Juxtacorticular, periventricular, posterior fossa or infratentorial, and spinal cord. Okay. Then variations. NMS can be ovoid, enhancing, callososeptal interface, isolated U fiber lesion, factor multiple sclerosis, Ballo's concentric sclerosis, and spinal cord lesion. Ovoid lesion. What are these called if it is present in the callososeptal interface? Dawson's fingers. Very characteristic of multiple sclerosis. Not seen in most other conditions. Usually seen on sagittal sections of flare. So as soon as you see it, bullseye again, multiple sclerosis. Ovoid shaped deep white matter lesions perpendicular to the lateral ventricular wall represents perivenous inflammation. So we also have a sign called the central venous dot sign. So usually seen in susceptibility weighted images. Callososeptal interface lesions, subcallosal striations, intracallosal lesions perpendicular to the ventricular wall, high sensitivity and specificity, thin sagittal flare used for MS diagnosis. So remember, as soon as you find such lesions in the callososeptal region, you should narrow down your diagnosis to multiple sclerosis, as such similar findings will not be seen in NMO. So the septal lesions are very characteristic. Isolated U fiber lesions. Juxtacortical lesions, MS lesions extending along the subcortical U fibers. About half of MS patients have at least one isolated U fiber lesion, representing inflammation along submucosal U fibers. It may be cause of subcortical dementia, relative specific for MS adopted in McDonald's criteria. So what do we have next? Factor multiple sclerosis. In factor multiple sclerosis, we call it glioma, glioblastoma, like MS lesion. Usually very large lesions, more than 2 centimeters in size. Mass effect is there, ring enhancement is there. Biopsy is often required for final diagnosis. But possibility of MS should be considered to avoid aggressive surgery. So here what we are seeing in this, we are seeing the lesion in the left right lossipular region. On flare, there is extensive vasogenic edema. The same is almost hypo to isointense on T1 weighted images with peripheral contrast uptake. So we should be very careful before calling something metastasis because the management will vary significantly. One which can be treated with just some steroids and some conservative management, and other which will require almost a radical resection of the same lesion. Differentiation between tumefactive multiple sclerosis and glioblastoma. Less mass effect than glioblastoma. Open ring sign. Where is it seen? Multiple sclerosis. Open towards the cortex or outward. Perfusion imaging should be done. Okay. Low density and non-contrast CT, no punctate hypointensity on SWI. Bellows concentric sclerosis. This is a very rare variant of multiple sclerosis. White matter destroyed in concentric layers. So you can see the layering within this. So that's why it's called Bellows concentric sclerosis. It was formerly considered to be a monophasic, rapidly progressive disease with a fatal outcome. Not now, though. Increasing number of cases with better outcome are seen these days. Relatively more frequent in China and in the Philippines, very rare in Europe, America, and Japan. So non-conventional MRI, diffusion, high field MRI or ultra high field MRI, phase imaging, susceptibility weighted imaging, double IR, USPIO enhanced MRI, diffusion MRI in MS. Active MS lesions may be partially hyperintense on diffusion weighted imaging. See, what we are seeing on diffusion weighted imaging is a peripherally hyperintense limb, which is the same on ADC showing a hyperintensity. So this definitely means there is restriction. So what does this mean? This means that that region is an active region and it might as well show contrast enhancement when we do contrast study. We can also see T2 shine through effect, which is seen centrally and the surrounding cytotoxic edema. High field, more than 3 Tesla MRI, higher SNR, 1.5 Tesla, more MS lesions can be detected, obviously, because the Tesla multiple sclerosis at 3 Tesla. So here we are able to see multiple lesions involving the brainstem, involving sentence semiovale, periventricular regions, subcortical regions, extensively involving almost all the lobes and in the white matter. Here again, same. Look at the brainstem. Again, the cerebellum also, infratentorial. Cortical multiple sclerosis lesions with 7 Tesla MRI. 7 Tesla MRI, we have not again used it on individuals now, which is always used on cadavers. So this is a case in which we are able to see so minute findings, which otherwise would never be picked up by a 3 Tesla or 1.5 Tesla MRI. So still in clinical trial level, but very soon with adequate trials, it should be able to make it to the mainstream market. Iron depositions and venous dilations shown on SWI in multiple sclerosis. So this is the vein dot sign. So what are we considering these T2 clear hyperintensities? So these are basically perivenular in location, very characteristic. Phase image at 7 Tesla. Hammond et al. Had done this. So these are also images which are very well seen, very beautifully imaged. Again, here you can see there is this centrally present vein and this perivenular location of the lesion. Cortical multiple sclerosis lesions on double inversion recovery, 2 times than SE. So what do we see here? Is more or less the same. Ultra small particles of iron oxide can be seen, phagocytic activity, high signal on T1 and T2 imaging. Biomarkers of multiple sclerosis. Why do we need surrogate tools to monitor multiple sclerosis evaluation? Relapses are relatively infrequent and poorly related to disability accumulation. Disability takes several years to accumulate. Clinical scales are poorly reliable. Most widely used MR measurements for clinical trials is T2 lesions load, new lesions, NR, enlarging lesions. Gadolinium, total lesion number, new lesions, and enlarging lesions. And again, T2 volume measurement by fuzzy connections. These are the new softwares that are helping in the diagnosis, but not very extensively used in very developed countries. Other MRI measurements used for clinical trials is T1 black hole, brain atrophy, spinal cord atrophy, whole brain MTR histogram, actography, spectrography, functional MRI. So all these also will play a very important role. Whole brain MTR histogram in multiple sclerosis. Okay, so it's very, very, very important. Peak height of whole brain MTRH represents the amount of normal myelin. So you're seeing the normal myelin in the control. Then we have the MS patient in which the line is continuous and not dotted. So you see how low it is. It's just starting at a higher level but ending way, way below the normal control. Different MTRH between MS patients and controls. Peak height correlates with neuropsychological tests and EDS. MRI in neuromyelitis optica. Remember neuromyelitis optica? It is idiopathic, severe demyelinating disease of the CNS that preferentially affects the optic nerve and spinal cord, commonly thought to be a variant of multiple sclerosis. Specific antibody for neuromyelitis optica is NMO or IgG aquaporin 4, which is a distinct entity. Pathologically, astrocytes are primarily damaged. Demyelination is secondary. Diagnostic criteria for NMO. Optic neuritis, acute myelitis, more than two of the following. Longitudinally extensive myelitis, more than 3 vertebral segments seen on MRI. Brain MRI is not fulfilling MS criteria. Positive aquaporin 4 antibodies. This is very important. That's why it's been highlighted. Remember, aquaporin 4 antibody needs to be found on testing. Where do you see aquaporin? You see it in the periphery, in the ventricles, in the aqueduct. So for NMO, you can always see along the ependymal laning, periventricular, periaqueductal hyperintensities and flare in T2. Very characteristic, in fact, for the diagnosis for neuromyelitis optica. So what are the differences between multiple sclerosis and NMO? Median age of onset, almost a decade earlier in multiple sclerosis, which comes up to 29, and for NMO it is 39. The ratio male to female. Obviously, we always know multiple sclerosis is more in females by a ratio of 1:2. But in NMO, remember, it is 1:9, which is way, way, way above. It is very rare to be seen in men. So in your regular practice, if it is in men, you should see it twice or thrice and rule out the presence of multiple sclerosis. MRI brain will mainly show periventricular lesions in MS, normal or non-specific. Where will you see the main lesions? Hypothalamic or brainstem? Periaqueductal, optic nerves should be visualized. MRI spinal cord. MS, usually short segment. Peripheral can involve the segment which is within, it can involve hemi, it can involve complete. Mainly, what is important is it is a short segment. But in NMO, it is longitudinally very extensive, involving over 4 or 3 vertebrae, centrally involved in most cases. So this is NMO. On T2 weighted imaging, you can see that there is extensive centrally located hyperintensity along the whole length of the spine, which is a long segment basically involving almost the whole length of the cervical and the thoracic vertebrae. Then on T1, again, when gadolinium is used, contrast is used, we can see there are many areas of enhancement which can be seen corresponding to the areas of T2 hyperintensity. Again, we are seeing these axial sections. We can see that there is central hyperintensity on T2. T2 hyperintense lesion density, MS versus NMO. Nakamura et al. NMO is preferentially involving the central lesion, and in MS involves the lateral and the posterior regions. So, brain lesions in NMO, what do we see? Cloud-like enhancement in NMO, multiple patchy enhancing lesions with blurred margin is seen, usually central synovial in the periventricular regions. 90% NMO patient, 8% in MS patients specific to NMO. So this patchy lesions with blurred margin, possibly caused by primary involvement of the blood-brain barrier by the autoantibodies. Now we'll enter discussion about ADEM. What is ADEM? Acute demyelinating encephalomyelitis. Severe inflammatory demyelinating disease, frequently secondary to the infection or vaccination. Remember, ADEM can only be talked about when previously the person has either been vaccinated or has been infected. If this is not there, if the patient does not have a history of fever, does not have any febrile illness prior to this incident, we cannot call it ADM. It is more or less mandatory. So, and it is monophasic. Like all those things that we had seen, they stretched a long time. They could have relapses, remission, all these things. ADEM is not monophasic. It may recur sometimes multiphasic disseminated encephalomyelitis. It is called MDEM, which is an entity recently described but not very often, may evolve to multiple sclerosis. How to differentiate it from multiple sclerosis? Or is there any diagnostic criteria? That is what we are going to discuss. And how do we differentiate it in its first attack? What are the proposed criteria for differentiation between ADEM and multiple sclerosis in a more than 15-year-old multi-center study in France? So here, what did they say? If there are more than two of the following, then it is ADEM. Atypical clinical symptoms for multiple sclerosis, like consciousness alteration, hypersomnia, aphasia, seizures, hemiplegia, absence of oligoclonal bands, gray matter involvement on MRI, no significant difference in infectious episodes or vaccinations between ADEM and multiple sclerosis. Role of MRI in differentiation of ADEM and multiple sclerosis in children less than 18-year-old. More than two of the following, usually MS, absence of diffuse bilateral lesions pattern, presence of black holes, presence of two or more periventricular lesions, sensitivity 81% and specificity specifically is 90%. Follow at least 3 years, 6 years for less than 11 years old is recommended when the diagnosed as ADEM. Most useful for differentiating a first attack of MS from ADEM. So here we are seeing ADM, we are seeing patchy hyperintensities in one flare as well as T2-weighted images. Subcortical, periventricular, centrum semioval regions involving the white matter. So how do we summarize it? MRI plays a very important role in the diagnosis of white matter diseases. It is multiple sclerosis, neuromyelitis optica, and AD. Useful biomarker in MS, obviously. The differences in MRI of MS between Asian countries and the Western countries. So, what is important? Again, we have to see here. Gadolinium enhancement. So this will tell us dissemination in space and multiple sclerosis. We are just going to go through the whole thing again. These three things very important: multiple sclerosis, neuromyelitis optica, ADM. Multiple sclerosis, we have to speak about the McDonald's criteria. Most important, what are the typical locations? Typical locations will be juxtacortical, periventricular, infratentorial, and spinal. These four things are very important. Then we should be speaking about dissemination in space, dissemination in time, describing what dissemination in space and dissemination in time means. Then also the Swanton criteria. I don't know how extensively it has been spoken about today, but it's still important. Then what are the proposed modifications for agents? Then what are the variations in MS? Remember, when we speak of MS, we should be speaking about the normal type, that is the classical. Then we have the tumefactive MS. We have the Ballo's concentric sclerosis. So, and we have also the Marburg type of multiple sclerosis. What is Marburg type? It is most dangerous type, very bad prognosis. It's also called malignant multiple sclerosis. The patient deteriorates very quickly. It's very hard to revive the patient from the condition that is going. Steroids are not very effective. Post treatment revival is not very significant. Comparatively better are these classical type and Ballo's concentric sclerosis, which preferentially have a better prognostication. Then we have neuromyelitis optica. Neuromyelitis optica, what do we look for? We look for aquaporins. Okay. Then what do we look for? After aquaporins, we look for these typical locations where there are in regions like subependymal region, periaqueductal region. Okay. Usually more involving the brainstem. Then typically involves the optic nerves, obviously. Optica. It's also called the Devick's disease. So as soon as you look for the optic nerves, think of neuromyelitis optica. Optic neuritis is a very important part of it. It can extend up to the optic chiasm. You can see edema. That is, you can see that there is increased thickness of the optic nerve over the normal limits. What do we take as the normal limit? Usually 3 mm. Anything more than that, the whole of the sheath, if you include, it should be more than 5 mm. So it's very important to observe all this. Then neuromyelitis optica, speaking of the spine lesions, remember in multiple sclerosis and in neuromyelitis optica, multiple sclerosis short segment, neuromyelitis optica long segment. Multiple sclerosis involves the periphery, neuromyelitis optica center. So this is how you can differentiate between these two things. That's also again very important. You need to know. And in agents, there is some amount of difference. Some studies state very differently, but no. Remember what is standard. And then speaking of ADEM again, you have similar findings. You will have patch ET2 flare hyperintensities involving the supratentorial aspects, most commonly involving the centrum semiovale periventricular white matter. Again, you will not see very extensive edema or anything, but what's most important is the history. Ask the patient for any history of vaccination, any history of any infective illness. That should give you the clue. Measles vaccination, for example. All these can take you to a direction where you can give a definitive diagnosis of ADEM. Okay, so that's all for today. There's these three topics you should all be good at after the discussion. Thank you.